From advertising to software as a service to data.
Across all of our programs and clients, we've seen a 55 to 65% open rate.
Getting brands authentically integrated into content performs better than TV advertising.
Typical lifespan of an article is about 24 to 36 hours.
If we're reaching out to the right person with the right message and a clear call to action, then it's just a matter of timing.
Welcome to the MarTech Podcast, and I Hear Everything production. In this podcast, you'll hear the stories of world-class marketers that use technology to drive business results and achieve career success. We'll unearth the real-world experiences of some of the brightest minds in the marketing and technology space so you can learn the tools, tips, and tricks they've learned along the way. Now here's the host of the MarTech Podcast, Benjamin Shapiro.
Welcome to the MarTech Podcast. I'm your host, Benjamin Shapiro, and today we're going completely off script. Joining me is my head of content production, my chief of staff, the man behind the podcast, Mr. Todd Hines. So far this week, we've talked about what happened for the MarTech Podcast in 2022. Yesterday, we talked about building content as a service, and today we're going to continue the conversation talking about how we're building reoccurring sponsorship revenue. All right, here's the third part of my conversation with Mr. Todd Hines, the head of content production and my chief of staff here at I Hear Everything. Todd, what's up, my man? Welcome back to the MarTech Podcast.
Great talking with you, Ben.
Always good to talk to you. And it's so funny. I said earlier this week I was nervous talking to you and going off script this week. And it's funny, you're literally, I kicked you out of the office. You're sitting in the room next door so our mics don't cross over. And now we've recorded 3 out of our 4 episodes for the week. And we're in a pretty good spot. How are you feeling? Are you still nervous about recording this content?
No, feeling good, feeling natural, flowing.
So let's talk about the real here. We create content. That is our product. And one of the big things that we did this year was we drastically changed how we monetize the content from the MarTech Podcast. Yesterday, we talked about we're monetizing our infrastructure. We can create podcasts for other people. But we also made some changes to our sponsorship model, basically to create more reoccurring revenue. So why don't you give everybody the 101 on what our sponsorship model is, and then I'll give the rationale behind why we made the change.
So our sponsorship program started years ago with $10,000 to $20,000 ad campaigns that we would manage for our clients over the course of 1 quarter. And we have recently this year switched to a model that is less comprehensive as far as a full marketing package and is now more narrowly defined by ads that we're able to dynamically insert within our episodes throughout the entire content archive.
I'm going to interrupt you and I'm going to push back. I think our new sponsorship program is more comprehensive.
Okay.
I think what we've done is we've standardized where we were doing ad hoc stuff. We would create a campaign that would be different for everybody. And now we've figured out more of what works and we've standardized it. Talk to everybody about the 3 flavors of sponsorship.
So we've got 3 tiers of our sponsorship package. The first one we call Awareness Builder Sponsorship. And this locks in a quarterly speaking opportunity. So someone can guarantee a guest speaking spot once a quarter on the podcast, anywhere from 20 to 30,000 audio ad impressions and co-branding on our website. We have the next tier up, Thought Leadership Sponsorship, and this jumps up to a $3,000 fee for the quarter and includes everything the first tier does, but it also guarantees a 5,000 interview download, which is a phenomenal guarantee for brands that want to come in and have a for sure impression of 5,000 downloads for their content. And then lastly, we do a demand generation sponsorship. That's our top tier sponsorship. This is $4,500 for every 3 months. And that includes a 1,000 listeners given to the website, in addition to what the other packages offered, a $2 CPC for additional visitors, and then attribution and conversion optimization. So that's really what gives the most value to our clients now.
Yeah. So basically, the way that we structured our program is for $500, $1,000, or $1,500 a month. We bill quarterly, so it's somewhere between $1,500 to $4,500 a quarter. We're doing all these awareness building activities, having our sponsors as guests on the show. We're doing audio ads in a rotational program. For the next tier up, we are basically making a commitment to market the content our sponsors produce with us. And then the third tier is we're actually doing demand gen, and we're driving the traffic from the people that listen to ads and content back to our sponsors' websites. And the reason for doing this was, like I said, partially standardization. What was happening was when we were doing ad hoc campaigns for our sponsors, they were effective, but we were always relying on the same three products. Creating content with someone, including their ads, so we had reach and frequency within our content, and then helping them retarget the people that were exposed to the brand so they could capture the demand in their funnel. And we tried all sorts of other things. We were doing newsletter promotions and cross-marketing with other channels, and we just found that these are the three products that we had. And by standardizing them, we were able to create reoccurring revenue. So what we've noticed has happened in the first 6 months of our sponsorship program, we basically turned off monetization for the MarTech podcast for almost a quarter as we were building the reoccurring revenue model. So that's somewhere between $10,000 to $40,000 of revenue a quarter. And we moved it to basically zero in June. And now, ever since then, we're up to $6,000 of MRR. It's been about 6 months, and we make $6,000 a month in our sponsorship program, but that's starting from zero. The good news is our sponsors haven't really churned. And so what we've seen is instead of people coming once for $10,000 to $20,000, we're starting to build a reoccurring revenue model where we're providing consistent, repeatable value to the sponsors. And so our hope is, well, if somebody's going to come in for, I don't know, $3,000 a month, hopefully they're going to stick around for a full year. Now they're a $12,000 sponsor because we've not only provided 120,000 ad impressions over the year, they've gotten 20,000 podcast downloads, they've got all the links on our website. I'll do some consulting with them as well. They're starting to understand that podcasting is about consistency. And really our goal here with the podcast program is to build not only depth of message, but also reach and frequency. And then when you get down into the higher tiers that we have, the $4,500 a quarter, we get into the demand generation sponsorship. We are able to retarget the people that are listening to a podcast and then that have heard your ads 10, 20, 30 times. So when you're in the real world, you need to hear something a couple times before you really digest it. And look, in marketing, that's reach and frequency, but it's not just about tonnage. You can't just market your brand everywhere and hit the same people all of the time. You need to have credibility and you need to have depth of message. People need to understand not only what you're selling, but who you are. And that's really where the content comes into play.
So Ben, we moved away from the $10,000 to $20,000 marketing packages that we used to sell a couple of years ago. Now we've gone into this recurring revenue sponsorship model. I'm thinking back to that. What's the main benefit of moving to that recurring sponsorship model that we have now?
There's really three benefits or three reasons why I wanted to make this shift. And honestly, it hurt the business this year. We took revenue all the way down to the studs, and then we're building it back up. Part of it was when we launched our content as a service business, I was getting distracted by trying to manage the ad hoc sponsorships we had. So part of it was standardization. We're standardizing our content as a service business. We were doing ad hoc sponsorships. It was becoming cumbersome and too hard for me to manage. And so by standardizing what we were doing, we now could build repeatable processes. So who was fighting the ads? It didn't have to be me. We weren't doing different ad strategies all the time. It's a consistent approach that we know works, and we could start to have other people take on the bulk of the operational load. I think that we're providing better value. We've honed in on what works. So by focusing on what we do well, creating content, delivering compelling ads within our content, and then being able to get the people that are exposed to that to our sponsor's website, all the other things that we were doing, co-branding and sponsoring other people's newsletters and traffic driving and all the fun little marketing hacks that we were throwing into some of our campaigns, it just wasn't our core competency. And then the third reason is reoccurring revenue is more valuable than one-off revenue. Like at some point here, we want to build a business that is scalable and can operate without me running the campaigns, Todd, without you being the only content producer. And I think about what the valuations are for SaaS businesses as opposed to consulting businesses, right? A consulting business sells for 1, maybe 1.5 times revenue. And a SaaS business, a technology business, sells for a 5 multiplier. And so we're essentially trying to build our business to be more of a technology company, to be more standardized, to be more automated. So our multiplier at someday when we do get to an exit is in that 5 to 7 range as opposed to the 1 to 2 range. So honestly, that's the real reason. It was preserving our time, doing what we do well, and making the most of the money that we have.
Okay, so Ben, we're closing out 2022. Where do we go from here?
I'm excited about all the sponsors that we have that came inbound, right? We don't do outbound anymore. We used to be doing a lot of cold outreach to try to get sponsors. We completely shut it off. And everybody that comes in through our sponsorship program is coming in organically, inbound. They've heard the podcast. They're interested in working together. And we're grateful for their support. They are actually sponsors. They are actually supporters of the podcast. We try to serve as a marketing channel. And I'm excited about continuing to support our sponsors. And I'm excited about, I think that we can scale and support more of them. But I think that we're now to the point where we've built enough infrastructure that we can actually do sponsorship as a business, which is ironic because I want to call it sponsorship as a service, but SaaS is already taken. So where we have our CAS model, content as a service, I can't say we're doing SaaS because nobody's going to understand. Maybe it's SUS, but that doesn't sound very good either. I think that we're getting to the point now where we're packaging up this sponsorship model, the reoccurring revenue model, and for other podcasters that need help with podcast growth and monetization, now we actually have something to offer them. So I think in 2023, 2024, we're going to do more SaaS as a service, sponsorship as a service, whatever we're going to call it. And that I think is part of the future. It's that third business line that you and I have talked about a lot, which is we're going to have our content as a service for our infrastructure. We're going to monetize the existing content that we have, the IP that we own. And then we're going to be able to help other podcasters that are in the space grow and monetize their service. And to me, that's what I hear everything's going to be, is those 3 channels. And I'm excited about getting more of it done in 2023. I think that's probably a good place to land the plane. All right. That wraps up this episode of the MarTech Podcast. Thanks for listening to my conversation with Mr. Todd Hines, the head of content operations and my chief of staff here at I Hear Everything. If you'd like to get in touch with me or Todd, well, you can go to martechpod.com. That's our website. You can ask us questions. You can sign up for the MarTech weekly newsletter. You can also reach us on social media. Our handle is MarTechPod, MarTechPod on LinkedIn, Twitter, Instagram, and Facebook. You can contact me directly. My handle is Ben J. Shap, BenJShap. And if you haven't subscribed yet and you want daily marketing and technology knowledge in your podcast feed, we're going to publish an episode every day this year. So hit the subscribe button in your podcast app and we'll be back in your feed tomorrow morning. All right, that's it for today. But until next time, my advice is just focus on keeping your customers happy.